Hello, Carla here from the MyClayCo studio. Today we have a really exciting tutorial, one of my favorite things to do with polymer clay, and that is 3D bookmaking. The great thing about 3D books is you can use them for all different kinds of things. I personally love to do them as standalone earrings or have them as book stacks. Though I have also seen people use the larger books to make little desk buddies. They might pop them down and have a dragon slumbering on them, which looks super cute. So to make 3D books, you can actually hand cut the pages and the book covers yourself. But to make it easier, we have actually got our own 3D bookmaking cutters. I love these cutter sets. We've had them for years and they're still one of my favorite cutters. We have them in a mini size, a small and a medium. Our mini one is just newly released, so I've been having lots of fun over the past couple of weeks making lots of mini book stacks and mini studs. We have these 3 different sizes. They're all great for different things. The larger ones obviously are good for, as I said, the desk buddies, also making into keychains, but you can also have them as standalone dangles, which I'm going to be going through today. The medium is the most versatile in my opinion because you can have them as standalone dangles, you can make them as larger statement studs, and you can also create beautiful book stacks like the ones that I'm currently wearing. And of course our mini ones that we've recently released, they're perfect for smaller studs. You can also make mini book stacks if people think that the medium book stacks are a little bit too heavy on their ears. All right, let's get bookmaking. To start off, I'm just going to be going through making a mini book stud. So our mini book studs actually embedded. So this is what I wanted to show you today. So it's very easy to embed with the 3D books because we're actually sandwiching 2 pieces of clay together anyway to form the books. So it's just a matter of putting your post in before you finish folding, and you'll have a perfectly embedded piece. So here I am, I've just rolled out my clay pieces and cut them out, and you can see the imprint on that little book. I've done the thickness of my clay so that it just imprints in it. It doesn't go too deep because I don't want to have tears, but also I want my book cover to be as thin as possible while still getting that imprint. And then it's just a matter of getting him up. Very easy to clean up the edges, and I'll get my pages. Now with book pages, I have seen some people actually create numerous really thin pieces of clay and stack them up to replicate pages of a book. You can do it that way, although I'm always paranoid about air bubbles and the like, and also lining up the pages so that they're perfect. So I find the easiest way is you create a block and then you simply get the back of your tissue blade and you drag it. And you do that on 3 sides. Obviously you don't need to do it on all 4 sides because this is going to be the spine of the book. There we go. So now you can see I've got little pages. I'm going to pick up my book. I want to try and line it up with the spine. So I take my side that doesn't have the pages on it, and I make sure that I've lined it up top and bottom. There we go. Now this is the part where we embed. So I'm going to take my post. I've already measured it out so I know that my post is going to fit. And all I'm going to be doing is just punching that post through so that it goes all the way through. Now all we have to do is close this up, which I'm just going to put my little page over. And then put my other cover over, and there it is. That is a perfect little book stud. So you can just tidy up the edges to make sure they're nice and flat just by pressing lightly. here, and if you do need to reform your pages at all, you can just slide at any point while you're holding your post. That's the great thing about the post, is it's there, it's really easy to maneuver with. But now that means we've got a cute little stud pair. Okay, so now we're going to get into doing a mini book stack. So as you can see with this one, it's quite a small book stack. It means it's not going to be too heavy on the ears, and you can even hang it from like a little post. It's not really going to get in the way when you're wearing them. So this one here, I've chosen 3 different colors, all complementary colors to each other, all in that kind of more vintage tone of red, yellow and green. And this one I did it in like an ombre effect, going from darker to lighter blue. I do find if you're going to be doing ombre effects or using the same color but in different tones, I like to put the darker color down the bottom just so that it's almost like a heaviest to lightest going up. It's just something that I found in art is more visually appealing, but you can do whatever you want. These are your book stacks. Whatever you want to do, that's fine. Now these 2 that I've got here, I've got one that's just a plain book stack and one that is a book stack that's got an open book on the top, and I've also got a floral embellishment. So when I do the small books, like these ones here, I will show embellishment on the top of the book stack. But for these small ones, we'll just do a simple book stack. Alrighty, I've got my colors here. I've decided to go kind of like the brown leather bound old vintage style. So I just pop all of those ones down, and I'm just gonna gently roll them so that they burnish to that tile so they don't get stuck in our cutter. And you can see that I've got a darker, a medium and a light. So I will have this one as my base, this is the middle, and this one up the top. So all I do is take my mini book cutter, and you just want to make sure if you're creating a pair of book stacks that obviously you are cutting out 2 of each book color. You can create different textures or put embellishments and everything on the front covers as well. Obviously, if you're doing a book stack, you would only do that on the top one because all the others are going to be hidden. So there would be really no point to that. I'm going to be doing the middle pages. Now, in terms of colors for middle pages, you can just do standard white. I also really like a crew and even like an antique gold for more vintage or older looking books. You can even use like a latte type color, but hey, I've also seen people do, you know, more horror themed ones where they've got black pages in a red book, and I think that looks pretty cool. So pages, again, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I just chop out 6. Okay, I've got my book pages. So first thing I'm going to do is release all of these pages. And I'll tidy up the edges and just score them with the back of my tissue blade just to make those pages. I'll show you the first one. You can see I'm just wiping away on that. Again, using the back of my tissue blade and just lightly scoring. Okay, so you can see now the pages. Looks like a little stack of papers. And I'll stand it up on the spine edge and I'll do the rest. And we're back. I've just scored all of the pages, and so now it's time to actually put them in the books. So again, I'm just gonna lift these books up. I like to kind of overhang them off my dial. Sometimes they re-stick and then I have to get them back off. And these ones. All right, so since I'm going to be putting the dark color down the bottom, I'm going to start with those ones. So one of the most important things when you're making books is just making sure that your clay is fully conditioned. If it's not fully conditioned, then when you bend these to put your pages in, you can actually get splits in the spine. So we want to try and avoid that as much as possible. So we're just going to grab our little pages, line it up, and wrap it around. Perfect. So there is our first little book of our book stack. Now I'm going to be baking these on a piece of paper, not on a tile, just so that it's not going to have a shiny back, which the tile can do. So I'm just going to pop it on the piece of paper as I go. And I'm going to make the rest of these ones and we'll come back to stacking them. Okay, I've finished creating my little books. I'll just bring them up here. Now you can see sometimes they're a little bit more indented in the middle, so I'm just going to take my tissue blade and just kind of flatten them out so that they're a bit more uniform. Although these ones are old books, so you can skip this step if you don't want them to be kind of more perfect looking. You can have them as wonky as you want. All right. Now let's get into stacking them. So starting with my dark books down the bottom, if you're making this as a pair, I always like to stack the books so that they're facing inwards. So they're facing each other. So I put the first ones down. The next ones I'm actually going to do slightly off center. And I want to try and get them as similar as possible. Me trying to get them perfectly. Okay, so I've got those ones. Now I'm just going to be putting the top one on. And again, I've only got that middle one slightly askew. So I can stack this one pretty much straight on top. So then you'll have a book stack like that. Okay, so let's get into small books. So I've used our small book cutter exactly the same way that I used the mini book cutter. The only difference is that you will see my clay is slightly thicker. And again, that's just because the imprint is slightly further in so that I've got my nice book imprint. I'm going to do the same thing with our pages though, and we're going to score it. Now I actually find scoring it way easier on the small one compared to the mini or the medium, just because it's the perfect size. And I'm just slightly applying pressure on either end just so that it's not pushing down with uneven pressure. And it means that the pressure from the blade is not going to squish the clay at all. If you do get any flyaway bits, you can just wipe them to the side just so that you're not going to get little random clay balls like these ones. If you do get them, you just roll them away. All right. Once again, we're folding that just so that we can find the center. Center and center. Perfect. I usually like to do one side first to make sure it's fully aligned. Like so. And then it means I've got this side. Now, if you were to just put this over, it would seem like it's short, but it's because we've got this bend here. So you just want to try and push from this end, and you see how it's now coming up and over. That's it. Perfect. Again, you can clean up, just make it a bit, square the edges off with that tissue blade, and let's get building. So I'm going to use the darkest purple as my base, and again I'm going to face them into each other and put my next color on top at a slight angle. And every time I've done book stacks, I've never had to put a clay bake adhesive in between them. And I think that's because I'm putting the eye pin through anyway, so the eye pin will hold it in place. So you don't need to worry about putting any other adhesives through. Okay, so we've got our book stacks. Now, what I'm going to do differently with these ones is I am going to embellish the top. So as you can see with these ones, these were an autumn book stack, so I did some autumn leaves and then put my eye pin through the middle. So these ones I chose like a ombre purple tone for them because I wanted these to be a little bit more romantic. So for those, I'm just going to grab a couple of molds. I think continuing that purple but adding in some gold, because I'm also going to have gold findings, I think will look really nice. So I'm just going to do a couple of leaves for each side, and then I'm going to put a flower on top. So a great thing about molds is all I have to do is squish a little bit of clay in. Especially with leaves, I don't tend to put a lot in. You can see that my mold is not fully filled, and that means that I can have a much thinner profile for my leaf. And I'll just pop that one down. I'm going to have it slightly overhanging. I'm kind of making up the design as I go. You 100% can plan it out. I just know that I want these colors and I want a couple of leaves and a flower, and I'll just position them where I think will look good. So there's that one, and I'll just show you the flower as well, and then I'll do the other side off camera. I'm going to use this flower. This one's my favorite flower to do. We'll use this kind of magenta-y purple. Probably a bit too much clay for my liking. Alrighty, that one's all pressed in. Beautiful. There's my lovely little flower. And I'm going to try and get the center of this flower in the center of my book stack, because that is where I'm actually going to be putting my eye pin through. So I'm just going to do the other side and then we'll get to the eye pin. Okay, I've got those ones done, and before I put the eye pins through, I'm just going to put a little bit of gold paint on this center part. It's going to be much easier to do it now than it is once I've got the eye pins in. Let's talk about different findings for book stacks and book earrings. The easiest way is to use an eye pin to actually put through the book or through the top of the book stack. The eye pin is simply just a long piece of finding metal, and it has a loop up the top. That's where you can attach your jump rings. The alternative is a lot of people use either the screw-in type, they're like a little hook, completely fine to use those as well, or head pins. Head pins have either a flat, a little ball or embellished bottom, and then it's a long piece of metal. To use those, you need to feed them through the bottom with the embellishment or ball or flat bottom underneath the books to hold them in place, and then you need to create a loop up the top. Now to do that, you need to have a set of looper pliers. So looper pliers, another outlay. So if you don't have the funds to purchase all of these things all at once, you can just get some eye pins, and you can just pop the eye pins in. If you think that they need a little bit more securing, you can actually take them out once baked and glue them back in. But eye pins are definitely the easiest way to attach them. So let's go put some eye pins in. Okay, I've got my book stacks and I've got eye pins. I've got a couple of different sizes. I just want to check. See, you can see here with the size, it's not going to fit all the way through the book stack, but that might not be a bad thing because we don't want it to touch the bottom. It would just mean though that your loop would be right on the top and your jump ring would sit there, which doesn't give you much space between the earlobe and your earring. So if I get my other, that was a 20mm eye pin. This is a 25, and yeah, that's probably a much better height. So all we have to do to put that one in is find the center of the book, hold him, and push through. If you feel slight resistance near the bottom, don't push all the way through, because otherwise you will be able to see your eye pin. See how you can't see the eye pin? Because I didn't push all the way through. I want to make sure that it's almost all the way through so that it's definitely in that bottom book, but I don't want to put it all the way through so that you see the eye pin down at the base. All right, let's put this next one in. Again, center of the book stack. All right. And that's it. You've got a pair of book stacks ready to bake, and we're going to bake it straight on this piece of paper on top of our tile so that we don't get any shiny pieces. Alrighty, I've got 30mm eye pins here. You can see that they're almost the height of the book stack with the embellishment on it. So because our books are a little bit thicker, I don't have to go all the way. So I'm just going to make sure that the eye of the eye pin sits just above the center. And I'm just going to hold it nice and steady, straight in the middle, and push that in. I think I'll stop there. And the other one, all the way through, and stopping there. And you can always test it, pull them up, they're all coming together. Perfect. Alrighty, those ones are good to go in the oven as well. Okay, now to get into our largest book, which is our medium book cutter. So this is the medium book cutter. You can see it's much bigger than our little mini or our small. And this is the one that I use mainly for keychains. Also, yeah, to sit little desk buddies on top of, but also to do these larger type books for a single book earring. And usually you would put an eye pin through the top of your book. If you're doing, say, a single book dangle, you might place the eye pin straight through the pages. But to make sure that this one hangs, I'm actually going to make it so that it hangs this way, because I think that will look nicer as a large book dangle. So I'm going to replicate this one that I made yesterday, so that we have a pair of earrings, and then I'll show you how we're going to attach a jump ring into this one, so that you can have it as a dangle. Okay, so I've got my black clay, which is going to be the base of my book, and I've got my medium book cutter. So I'm just going to cut this one out. Again, you want to try and roll out your clay to a thickness so that it just imprints that center spine of the book, as you can see. And here's for the special part. So how we get this effect on the cover is we exclude the side with a piece of paper. So from the spine of the book, you don't need to roll this one down or anything. You just need to make sure that it's making contact with the clay. Then we're actually going to use a stencil. So make sure that we're matching this one, I want to use the same area of the stencil, which was this top corner. So all I'm doing is I'm lining up the top corner, and I'm just going to lightly roll. We don't want to put too much pressure on this because we don't want to warp the book piece that we made. It's just so that it's making contact there. Then all we're going to do is we're going to take some pigment powder and a brush, and I'm just going to brush it on. So I like to try and gather from the lid so that I've got more control and I'm not dumping a whole heap of pigment powder out on my piece, because you only need a little bit. These pigment powders, we sell them in 5-gram bottles, and honestly they would probably last you a lifetime. Unless you accidentally spilt one, they just go and go and go. You hardly use any with each of your projects. So they're such a good little supply to have. Alrighty, so I've brushed that one on. I'll just pop my pigment powder and brush to the side, and then I'm just going to lightly blow to make sure there isn't any loose pigment, because once I peel this off, if the pigment goes on the black, it'll kind of ruin our effect. And then all I do is peel. And look at that. Beautiful. That is a beautiful cover to our book. You can also do that on any of your book stacks. If you didn't want to embellish the top with your, say, a floral or something like that, on one of your books you could actually do this so that the top of the book stack has a nice pattern on it. I've also done it where I've attached washi tape. So I did many experiments with washi tape on the tops and sealing them just with a glaze and with UV resin, and they're great. So you experiment as much as you want with what you want to do with the covers. But now we're just going to form our book so that we can finish this rose detailing. So I've got the white clay for the center. Now you'll notice that the clay that I've got for the center pages is quite thin compared to the spine. And that's so that I can get this kind of book overhang effect, and so that the book isn't going to be too heavy and thick. So this one, for example, I used for a, I'm using for a desk buddy. So I've got quite thick pages because it's going to be sitting flat. So it doesn't matter, whereas because it's almost double the weight of what this is. So this would probably be a bit too chunky for an earring. And you can see that the middle pages are almost double what that is. So I don't need to burnish that one because I'm going to be picking it up anyway. So that's nice and cut. All right, and again, I'm just going to drag that back of the blade, form those pages. As I said, it is easier on the small books, but it's just the same process. Making sure we're sliding along. And clearing up any of those corners. And there we have it. Okay, so let's pick this one up. You just want to be careful that we're not going to smudge this powder. So I'm going to try and handle it from this side rather than this side. But we're just clearing the edges up. Just smooth any of that clay. and then we'll join the pieces. If you do have any edges that you didn't quite cut through, the good thing about books is that they're straight, so you can easily clean it up with your tissue blade. Alrighty. This also saves you from having to sand after they're baked. So all I'm going to have to do with this after baking is maybe put some paint on and seal the powders, and they're done. Alright, so I grabbed my book. I'm actually going to fold it over this way so that I'm not touching the front cover. Just make sure I center it on both ends. Alrighty, and I'm going to do this one first because I'm going to have to touch the back more. Doesn't matter if you touch it a little bit, you just want to limit it. Okay, and then I fold this one round. And just make sure I'm getting some overhang with this one as well. Okay, there we have it. That is our beautiful medium book. Okay, so I'm going to make some pretty simple roses today, and I'm just going to use the one cutter. So this is our rose roll-up cutter. You can see one rose is larger and two are smaller. So these are a single and this is a double. So that means I just need 4 roses. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you can actually, we have plenty of different leaf cutters, but just to show you that you can use the same tool, I'm actually just going to use these to make the leaves as well. Probably won't need all of these, but I'll just cut out 2 while I have it rolled. Okay, and let's take this over to our foam mat. Okay, so I've got my single rose line, and I'm just going to use my ball tool just to push them out. And extend the edges, and then just flatten these lightly so that it's not bulky clay. And then literally all I have to do to make a rose is roll that. Okay, and then we have a little rose. All you have to do is just open up some of these, depending on how open you want your rose. I think the smaller ones should be semi-closed. I'm just going to twist it so that the clay at the bottom takes off any excess. And then we're just going to chop the bottom so it's nice and flat. So that is our first little rose for our book. Okay, now we're going to be doing the larger rose. So I've just done the same. I've got my a small rose, and I'm going to use that as the centerpiece. And then I'm just going to wrap it with another one. All right, so I'm just gonna stick it on. And now all we do is move that one around. Okay, so that one is now double the rose. So I'm going to do the same, slightly pinch the bottom and roll. Now this one is a larger one, so I'm going to open the rose more than the other ones because they were more rose buds. Whereas I want this to be more like an open rose. Beautiful. And as for the leaves, again, I'm just taking one of these, but I'm actually going to chop them so that each ridge is its own individual leaf. And then you'll see with this leaf, all I'm going to be doing is pushing and extending that down. So it'll slightly cup the ridged edges and it'll give me somewhere to stick down on our book. And I'm just going to do that for all 6. Okay, I've got all my pieces together. I'm going to use some clear liquid clay just to pop on here to make sure that they adhere during baking, just because I do have a pigment powder. So if any of these are touching the pigment powder rather than the clay, it's not going to adhere. So I'll just get a little dollop of that. And I know from this piece that I'm going to have it come around here. I'm also going to lightly dip my pieces into this liquid clay as well. It's going to be pretty easy for me to pick them up. Now I know where my leaves are going, so I'm actually going to place them first, just so then I can put my roses down on top of those. It doesn't matter with this one so much that it's not touching here, because I'm going to be sitting a rose on top and the rose is going to be touching this and this. So you just want to make sure that you have them in contact with something that will be able to adhere during baking. Okay, I've got all my leaves on, so now I'm just going to place my roses. I'm going to place the 2 smaller ones first. I'm just going to pick them up, give them a little dip. And plonk it over. Alrighty, and then we're going to get our big one. And do the same, just pop it in the center here. Okay, and they look pretty symmetrical to me, and they're ready to bake. So I have all my pieces here ready to bake. I've got my second little embedded stud, my 2 book stacks in the 2 different sizes, and I have my large one. So I'll pop these in the oven, and then when we come back, we'll do the final assembly. Alrighty, we've got our stuff out of the oven now. The last step that we're going to do is just do some finishing touches. So I do have a number of metallic paint pens here. You can see on the spines, we've got these little like tabs on the side. I generally like to paint those so that they look like real books. So we've got them on all of them. So I'm just going to pick, so these are smaller tipped pens. So I'm actually going to use them on these smaller ones. And I reckon I'll get away with the larger on both of these. So all I'm doing really simply, just putting a bit of paint on those. And because this is painted, I will need to just seal. So I'm just going to, once I've finished painting, put a little bit of just Sculpey glaze just over the top of these paint markings, just to make sure that they don't rub off. I generally like to use a paint pen that is the same color as whatever findings I'm using. and I generally pick the types of findings that I'm using based off of the colour. So obviously browns are warm tones, so I've used gold, so then embellished with gold. This one is like, red is a warmer tone, but I have got the white of the spine of the book, so I'm actually going to put silver along here. And yeah, red is one of those ones where I find red can go with silver or gold. So black and silver looks awesome on books. Me not being very careful. There we go. Okay, so the larger ones, I've got a gold chrome effect paint pen. So all I want to do is just, and you can see this is very, very much the same color as the gold that I've got on the front, so this is going to be great. And I'll just do the same on these ones. So I'm going to lay them down since I've got quite a few to do. And any paint that you have that goes over, you can either leave it, you can try and just scrape it off with your nail while it's still wet. But worst case scenario, you can always get a little bit of isopropyl alcohol on a cotton bud and you can just wipe that gently to the side. Okay, so I've got all my books to the side. These ones here that just have the eye pins, all I have to do is pop a little jump ring through those and attach them to whatever finding that I want, and those ones are done. As for these ones, I'm just going to show you how to attach a jump ring through the corner. So this one, as I said earlier, you can put an eye pin in the center there, but I just find it doesn't get much movement if it's a earring, especially of this size. So we're going to put through the corner, and I have actually found a trick for this. So you don't want to drill it straight down like you would normally with an earring. Because this is quite thick, your jump ring is gonna struggle to get through there. And this is a 10 mil jump ring. So it's gonna struggle to get through that one. So what I'm gonna do instead is I'm actually going to drill at an angle so that it only has to go through the width of the cover. So I find that the easiest entry point to go through, and the one that works with best with jump rings, is where this book, the side of the book is, that little marking up there. I usually go just above that, and I'm going to go at an angle. So I'm first going to start drilling in, and once I've got that little drill mark, so it will hold my drill head in, I'm actually going to go up at a 45, and I'll put my finger here. I'm just gently pressing. I'm not going to stab myself through here, but I'm just gently pressing so that once it goes through, yeah, I'm already feeling it on my finger. See how you can see it there? See, it's pushing the front cover, between the front cover and the pages. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So I'm just going to clean that out there. Drill back and forth a little bit. And there we go. So that now is the perfect angle for us just to grab our jump ring and go straight through. Really super simple, but it still means that you've got all of this clay holding this piece on, so it's really nice and sturdy. If you're wondering about the weights of all of the earrings, especially the larger ones, they go from about 3.5 grams all the way up to just over 11 grams. So these bigger single dangles that are made with our medium book cutter, they are 11.22 grams. I think they came in on each earring, which I've had heavier earrings than that in. That doesn't bother me, but if that does bother you, or you think that if you're selling and your customers might want to know if they're a little bit heavier, you can always just pop a little description on your website. I really like it when people do that. I think if you're in the polymer clay world, you know that polymer clay doesn't weigh a lot, but if you're not in the polymer clay community, you probably don't know that, and you would see a large piece of jewelry and you might think, oh, I won't buy that because I think it will be a bit too heavy. So always pop it on your description if they are a little bit larger, just to put people's minds at ease that they're not going to be super heavy. We hope you've enjoyed the video today. If you found it helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We will be posting weekly with lots of polymer clay tips, tricks and tutorials. If you did want to see anything specific, just drop a comment down below and we'll get onto it. See you next time.